All right. Well, again, this is our final time together. And, I'll start by just sharing some closing remarks about the retreat experience. And then we'll move into a time where I'll invite you to share something about your retreat experience. I had sent an email out on Friday, one of the many, that offered some suggestions about what you might consider sharing today. And I'll later review those, and we'll have our final gratitude gaze during that time of sharing. And then we'll close today with a letter that Teilhard wrote to his niece. And it's probably maybe his most famous piece of writing. And it's a good chance that you've heard it before. But I'll show you a lovely video that is put together around that piece of writing. And then we'll have a little Lectio Divina practice to close. Um, but let me start with just some general observations about the experience, and then I'll try to offer a little guidance too about what prayer might be like for you now that the retreat is done. Um, and there's certainly a whole lot to this retreat. There's just so much material, and it's a bit rigorous if if you sort of follow all the instructions. Um, and truth be told, you can't really know what you've gotten yourself into until you've gotten into it, right? Um, and the way that the experience is laid out, with spiritual exercises each week, like each week you had three or four exercises, those can feel a bit like assignments, I suppose. And then there's the large group and the small group and the soul chat meetings to attend, or if you don't attend them in person, you can review them on video. And I suppose like the small group and the soul chats might even feel like a little bit like progress reports, like checking in, like how's it going? And and again, you can look at all that and experience all that, and it could feel almost like a class that we're moving through with a lot of homework. And maybe it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so behind on the assignments. I'm definitely not going to get a good grade here. Right? Um, and it's hard sometimes not to think like that because that's just how we're formed when we have experiences that are like this. But let me invite a thought that may counter that. Um, if you've ever been to a health club, I'm sure many of you have, not all of you, or a gym. When you go into a health club, you have like the aerobic area where there's like treadmills, ellipticals, Stairmaster, whatever. And then there's an area for strength training. You might have weights and machines. And then you've got an area for stretching, maybe mats and straps. And let's say you meet with a trainer because you just started at this health club, and she gives you like a real comprehensive 3 week workout plan that involves all the areas of the health club to, engage in. And again, the plan is aimed to enhance your physical fitness, right? Because that's why you're here. But it turns out to be a pretty busy 3 weeks for you. And you didn't get to the health club quite as often as you thought you would. And when you were there, you really liked the treadmill, but the weights and the stretching, no thanks. I really wasn't into that. Um, but if you think about it, given the time you had and the effort that you did make, like your physical fitness did improve, right? You got stronger. Like your aerobic of fitness, if you spent a lot of time on the treadmill, you spent some time on the treadmill, improved. Now, we can use that as an analogy for the retreat. Like you have a 3 week fitness plan, right? And maybe the experience of working my way through that fitness plan is, I tried to follow it the best I could. And turns out that I listen to music just about every day. I kind of got into those imagining the gospel scenes. There's something about that that really kind of spoke to me. But I bet there was at least a half a dozen emails I didn't even get to open, right? And if we were to use the health club as an analogy, we'd say, the effort you gave in the exercising, right, that you did, improved your spiritual fitness, right? Like that would just make sense, right? But here's where the analogy falls apart, right? And this is really an important thing to consider. Like, it's not about you, right? Let me repeat that. The retreat is not about you. Going to the health club, putting your effort in there, yeah, that's pretty much all about you. But bringing your effort to the experience here is not all about you. It's about a relationship, right? It's about your relationship with God. And we said two things our first Sunday that really bear repeating. One of them was Ignatius's key instructions around the spiritual exercises. And you can confirm the truth of this through your own experience. But, he reminds us that God deals with each of us directly, that, each of us has our own unique relationship with the divine, that each of us can have a personal relationship with Jesus, a relationship with Mary, a relationship with Joseph. And, for all of us, those relationships are a little different. And so, because it's about relationship, like because this is all about a relationship, I'm not the only actor, right? You're not the only actor. The Holy Spirit is also an actor, a very significant actor in our relationship with God. So, like, that's the first thing that's really helpful to remember. The second thing, again, we said it on our first Sunday, and here it was a quote from Jesus. So, for our part of the relationship, it only takes a mustard seed, right? It only takes a mustard seed. So when you think back on your 3-week journey, like maybe it was a particular song for you, or maybe it was some time you spent gazing at the crush in your own house, like imagining, like we said, the room where it happened. Um, or maybe it was a question that was posed at some point in the journey, like what within me waits to be born, or how might I be called to give birth to Christ this Christmas? Like, and because of that little mustard seed, we can experience the nearness of God. Like all of a sudden, God becomes very near to us, like this felt nearness of God. It says God drawing us in. And as God draws us in, we're gifted in a way that meets us right where we are, right? Like that meets us in our busyness, in our distraction, in our confusion, in our boredom, right? Like our heart gets awakened. And thanks be to God, we are gifted with some increase in faith or hope or love. And that happens through the relationship. That is strengthened through the relationship. So, one way to think about the retreat, it's an exercise plan, yeah, but it's an exercise plan for nurturing the relationship that you have with God, right? The relationship is really what matters. That is all that matters. And in a real way, the retreat is going to continue because your relationship with God continues. Like these 3 weeks, whatever happened between you and God, you're going to build on that because your relationship with God continues. And so, since that's true, um, that the retreat sort of continues because your relationship with God continues, I want to just offer a few thoughts about how you might work to kind of continue with this spiritual exercising plan that you started with. Like how might you take all this content, maybe a lot of which you didn't get to, or a lot of which you didn't get to spend the kind of time you wished you had with it. How can you take that content and continue to work with it, continue to bring it into your relationship? Let me just ask, by a show of hands, has anybody ever made a online or an online or an at-home retreat? That's more important. Like, has anybody ever done an experience like this, like at home? Mary, like two people, Anne? So two people out of those who have gathered had done something like this at home. Well, I think there are some really unique advantages to doing an at-home retreat like we did. So when we go to a retreat house like Bellarmine, which is fantastic, and we spend a weekend or maybe even a week-long retreat, we step out of our everyday life in order to fully focus on that relationship, right? On our relationship with God. Like that becomes the singular intent, no distractions, right? And as I move through those days with that singular intent, it can provide just such a beautiful deepening of that relationship. Now, the challenge is because we've stepped out of our routine to go on retreat, the challenge is when we return back to our regular routine, how do we find ways to continue to attend to the relationship that became so important for us during our days on retreat? And that can really be difficult. And so, in an at home retreat, like you don't have to return to your regular routine because you never left it, right? That is really one of the great gifts for making an experience like this. You do it in the course of your normal comings and goings. And what's more, um, like think about the time of the year that you chose to do this in. Like perhaps there's no more busy time for most of us than Advent. You got the cultural forces of Christmas. Like they create so much expectation and so much activity. Like we just talked about eating all these cookies, right? But again, there's lots more activity than simply eating cookies, but it yields to lots of ways to get distracted. And so finding time to nurture our relationship with God in, quiet contemplation or, spending time in intentional small groups talking about the relationship. It's like swimming upstream because like you you have all these currents coming at you and it's just really, really difficult. Um, but again, just please realize, like, despite those strong cultural currents, you and God found ways to be together these last 3 weeks. So take note, really take note of what worked for you here during these 3 weeks as you made this at-home retreat in the course of your regular routine. And of course, if you're here today live, or even if you're watching this on a video, something happened in your relationship with God these 3 weeks, or you would have definitely lost interest by now. Like there's so many other things that you could be doing right now, you would not be here, right? So something happened in your relationship with God. Take note of that. Where did you and God feel closer during these 3 weeks? Like, that's a good question to start with. As Ignatius, again, always invites us in our prayer, like his continual reminder is to review and pay attention to what our experience was, right? So when it comes to prayer and spiritual practice, um, when we review and pay attention, it really helps us find what works for us. And we really have to find what works for us, or it's not going to work. That's really the truth. Like in the words of Shakespeare, to thine own self be true. Again, God is on a unique journey with each of us, and we have to be true to that journey. And so discovering and recognizing those ways that God draws me closer and I can allow myself to be drawn closer and have that relationship nurtured. Like that's really, really helpful in our spiritual journey. And again, it could be all sorts of different ways that that happens for you, from listening to music to praying with the scripture to, you know, taking walks outside in nature, to being with other people and talking to them about your experience and just being in those kinds of important relationships. So, again, to thine own self be true. But I want to offer three, um, I hope they're practical suggestions for continuing to work with the material that you were offered. And, to think about working with that material perhaps in the days or weeks or even months to come, because again, you're going to have access to everything all the way into the Easter season. So here's the first example or first suggestion. If you kept a journal, right? And if you didn't keep a journal, that's fine. Just take some time to review your 3 weeks. But if you kept a journal, set aside a period of time where you can take your journal and read back through it and do so mindfully, do so prayerfully. And as you do, use a highlighter. And when you notice what entries in your journal have energy for you now, like as you reread them, like this still seems attractive, like, wow, there's something here. Highlight that. Highlight those words, highlight that section, and go through your entire journal that way. Again, maybe those sections or whatever are drawing you in. Maybe it's something that's really affirming or inviting to you in some way, or it could even be challenging for you, but like challenging in a way like, yeah, this is something I want to pay attention to. Not challenging you like beating you over the head, but challenging you, drawing you in. And so once you've gone through your journal that way and have highlighted all those passages, then with God, go through all your highlighted passages again. Spend some time just reflecting on all those passages. And again, what is drawing you in with each of them? And take your time here, right? But then when you feel ready, like when you feel like I really kind of simmered in the experience. When you feel ready, I'd like you, or the invitation is to write a letter to your future self, like to sit down and think about Al 2 months from now, 3 months from now, 4 months from now. What do I want to say to him about the experience of these 3 weeks, right? And you can let the letter be anything you want it to be, but maybe where you found fruit this Advent, right? How your heart has been awakened, like the graces, the gifts, the yeses that are emerging in you, or that you've noticed, or maybe that are starting to emerge. What your hopes and dreams are for your relationship with God in the future, right? And then once you've written that future letter to yourself, seal it up, tuck it away somewhere in your house. But if you're like me, make sure it's somewhere where you can actually find it again. Um, and then once you've done that in your calendar, choose a date again, sometime in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, a day that has some spiritual significance to it. Like maybe it's Ash Wednesday, or maybe it's your favorite feast day or Easter, or maybe it's your birthday, like some day that has some import to it. And in your calendar, schedule a date with God to open your letter, right? And then when that day comes, find some quiet time, like settle yourself into God's presence, and then read your letter. And then let your letter be the grist for your prayer. Like what moves in you as you read it, 2, 3, 4 months out. And then as you sort of settle into your response, then you might imagine what's God's response to your response. You might ask God to sort of share with you how God sees you now, right? Or you could talk to Jesus or Mary or however you feel called to bring it to prayer. But chances are, like in that letter, there's going to be some treasure waiting for you to return to. So that's suggestion one. Suggestion two. Um, Suggestion two is to remember those two words that I asked you to write down the first Sunday. And those two words were begin again. Begin again um, are not just perhaps the most two important words of this retreat, but they may be the two most important words in your spiritual path, your spiritual practicing, your prayer life for the remainder of your life, right? So every time you begin again, right, you follow Mary's example and you offer your yes, right? So begin again. Like it applies so many ways. Like begin again every time you discover you've become distracted during a prayer period. Like how many times when I give myself a half an hour to pray, like does my mind go here, there, everywhere, and I have to call my mind back again and again to what I'm doing, right? And if you have a meditation practice and you're doing centering prayer or anything like that, you know how distracted the mind becomes, right? Begin again when days or weeks or maybe even months go by and you just haven't had the inclination or the time to give yourself to your prayer and your spiritual practice the way you'd like to. So begin again, like begin again. God gives us an infinite number of chances to start again. And God is always waiting to receive us, right? To receive our yes once again, once again, once again. So, specifically regarding this retreat, you might choose to literally begin again with the material, right? Um, it might be helpful to just return to the website real quick here. I'll pull this up. Hey, Mary Kay. Oh man. Okay, hang on. I gotta find it real quick. Just take me 1 second. Okay. Can y'all see that okay? Yep, good. Okay, let me pull this down, close this up. Beautiful. Okay, so here are your pages, right? And and again, you'll have access to these pages, through the Easter season. And you know that the secret code, the passcode is Advent. Um, so there's two ways you could think about doing this. Um, One, there are 11 exercises, um, spiritual exercises. You got, yeah, four in week one, three in week two, four in week three. And if you count the like the pre-work, there's 12 exercises. So one way you could begin again here is just to take an exercise a week. Maybe you start the first of the year. You start whenever you feel moved to start, but you make a commitment to just pray through the exercises, but do it at your own pace. And maybe your own pace is one a week. So you just work with the pre-work exercise of watching that video and reflecting on Teilhard's five principles. And you spend a week on that when you can get to it. And then the next week comes and you start week one and you do week one, exercise one for that week, week two, or week one, exercise two for the third week. And you sort of move through the experience again at that structured, somewhat structured pace, but a much easier going pace, right? The other way you could make the retreat again, um, well, let me offer two other suggestions. I mean, there's some that you can do it any way you want, but I'm just trying to give you some creative ideas here. Is you can start again, but just spend time with each exercise consecutively until you've sort of run out of gas with an exercise and then feel called to move to the next exercise. So you spend time with the pre-work, and maybe it is a full week, but maybe it's only 2 days, or maybe it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Again, it's not about getting through the content. It's about allowing the content to nurture your relationship with God. So if you're finding fruit in a particular exercise, stay there as long as you continue to find fruit. And then once you feel called to move to the next exercise, then move to the next exercise. And you may find that, again, you spend a lot of time on certain exercises and less time on other exercises. And I guess the third thing that I would suggest as a way to kind of work with this is if you go through your journal, or even now, there may be areas of the retreat that you realized, boy, there was a lot of good stuff here, but I just didn't have time to get to it. So if something is immediately calling to you, like week two, for example, and those opportunities to really journey with Mary through the Annunciation and the Visitation and the Nativity, if like you felt like, wow, that really had a lot of potential here for my journey with God, I just would like to spend more time there, then by all means start there. Begin again there. Okay. So again, you'll have this material for a long period of time. And I would invite you, if you're so moved, to return to it. Now, here's the third option for you. This retreat is hosted on a website for a contemplative community that I'm a part of, an online community. It's called Still Point. And some of you are part of Still Point. You are already participate in this community. But all of you have been exposed to it because you signed up for the retreat, and I had to register you and give you access to the material through the Still Point website. So I'm just going to toggle over here, and maybe you all have kind of checked out the website, but maybe you haven't. But if you're interested, you just click on the logo Still Point, and you come to the home page. And this is an online um, Christian contemplative community. And there are 10 different opportunities each week to gather with other people to pray online. And I'm not going to go into any real depth about this because you all can do that if you're so moved. But I just want to show you the chapel schedule. So there's two types of chapels. There's the contemplative chapel and there's guided meditation chapels. And each week, every week, this is the schedule. Monday at 7, Monday at 7:30 p.m., Tuesday at 7 a.m., all the way through to Saturday. So there is a chapel you can attend online almost every day of the week. And where it says contemplative chapel, these chapels are made up of 20 minutes of quiet prayer, like many people practice centering prayer or another type of meditation, but however you want to spend that quiet time with God for 20 minutes. And then we move into a Lectio Divina practice. And so there's a short reading that's read a few times aloud. And then there's some time after the reading is read for reflection and what we call sacred sharing. And then the contemplative chapel concludes with prayers of the faithful. And at any given time, we're working with a particular theme. So, of course, this is the liturgical season of Advent. So, all the Lectio material is related to Advent, and it'll be related to Christmas once Christmas comes. But when January rolls around, we're going to start working through the Psalms. So, all of our prayer focus is going to be on the Psalms. So those are our contemplative chapels. There's also guided practice chapels. So if you're just interested in coming to participate, maybe a little more passively, on Monday evening at 7:30 p.m. and Tuesday and Thursday at 5 p.m., we have guided meditations online. Monday is we do something with loving kindness meditation. Again, I won't take time to explain these things. You can read about them in the website. And Tuesday, Thursday is the welcoming prayer. But this might be another place for you to find um, opportunity to continue to be in community, number one, because community can be very helpful for helping us nurture our relationship with God. And if you are interested in participating, I mean, all you need to do is click the register button. Maybe you'll be able to see where this takes you. It just requires a first name, last name, and an email, and that's all you need. So I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I am going to stop talking for a moment or two, and see if you all have any questions that I might be able to try to respond to, or just any comments before we move into our own kind of sharing about the experience for us. So again, is there anything that is on your mind that is not quite as clear as you wish it were, and I could try to respond to something?
Thanks for the great suggestions. I'm curious, you had shared at the beginning of the retreat that all that beautiful music that you've compiled would be somewhere, and I'm wondering if you could point us in that direction.
Yeah, I will. You're going to get one more email from me, Elaine. It'll probably come out on Tuesday. I have to write it, but definitely this week before Christmas. Thanking you for coming. I'll give the recording for today and the playlist on Spotify. And before today's up, I'll just put that playlist in the chat. I'll put the link to that playlist in the chat so you can grab it immediately if you want to. But you'll definitely be getting it in an email.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else, friends?
I don't
What,
have a
what,
question, but more just a comment, Al and group, of just how supportive and just like over the top, above and beyond, resources upon resources, and just, just holding space and love, and like I just really feel like you're so engaged and present and here for us. And I love that idea of the chapel and the idea of repeating the retreat. So just thank you. Thank you for being so engaged and such a just well done. Thank you.
Well, you are most welcome. Thank you for saying so.
I was just going to add to that in a way. If I was feeling like I had not used the resources, I'm like probably your prime candidate for, not getting to things this during this time. And I've enjoyed the time I've had, but I think what you just did was alleviate that feeling that you've actually missed something, and all your ideas about how to incorporate this in the future were wonderful. So thank you for that, because I think this could have a lasting utility, if you want to call it that.
Good. I hope it does.
It's
Al,
like
I
the
have a
gift that keeps
question.
on giving. I'm more of a paper person, and I've printed up all the exercises, and I keep them in a folder. And some, instead of a journal, there's a lot of marginal notes and that sort of thing. And it's my intent. Like I say, the gift that keeps on giving. I'll come back to it and follow your suggestions and everything. Um, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. I used to host the full annotation 19, and we did it all on paper, Bill. And like the binder was like this thick by the end of the 34 weeks. So um, which is great to have that resource, but it's also nice to be able to access it online. Anything more? Not that you can't email me at any time if you have subsequent questions or run into anything.
I just wanted to say that just as COVID started, I joined the meditation chapels. And I really believe that they change your life in a very good way. So I recommend them highly for those of you that have not come on a Still Point to join us in the new year. It really will change how you see things and how you react to things, and it's really, as I say, life changing. Thanks, Al.
Thank you, Mary Kay. I did.
Al, I just want,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, go ahead, Mary Lynn.
I just wanted to say that this is the second time I've taken this retreat, and each and every time has been so powerful. And I remember how it was before and how it is now, and it's just amazing. I think in my opinion, and I might be biased right here, but I think that anything that you're involved in is very spiritual, very rewarding, and it's something that I want to do. That much I do know.
Thanks, Mary
Not
Lynn.
that I'm not trying to give you, I mean, really. And I'm thinking, I wonder if I should really take it. I mean, the fact that I can do it again for the next 6 months is great, because it's just a powerful retreat. Powerful.
Well,
Life changing, like Mary Kay was saying.
the real thanks goes to Ignatius and Teilhard and certainly to God. So let me just invite us to pivot to our final opportunity to share. And in Friday's email, you know what? I'm going to just stop recording because I'd rather have this be private.
Above all, Trust in the slow work of God. We are quite naturally impatient in everything to reach the end without delay. We should like to skip the intermediate stages. We are impatient of being on the way to something unknown, something new. And yet it is the law of all progress that is made by passing through some stages of instability, and that it may take a very long time. And so, I think it is with you. Your ideas mature gradually. Let them grow. Let them shape themselves without undue haste. Don't try to force them on, as though you could be today what time, that is to say, grace and circumstances acting on your own goodwill, will make of you tomorrow. Only God could say what this new spirit gradually forming within you will be. Give our Lord the benefit of believing that His hand is leading you, and accept the anxiety of feeling yourself in suspense and incomplete.